I think it bit me, whatever it was.
All right, we are recording.
Hello, I'm Vincent White. I'm here to talk to you tonight about the Delaware Real Estate Commission. I was to be here a couple of months ago, but I got, at that time, our state treasurer decided to take up all the time with his good information about the treasury. So I got to come back. And now I know what it feels like to bleed a preliminary card on a heavyweight boxing match. So I'm not going to detain you long, but I did want to share to what we were asked to come in and talk to you guys about the Delaware Real Estate Commission. And so let me give you some background. I'm a Delaware Real Estate Commissioner. I'm a 30-year-plus real estate broker, self-employed. The commission is made up of 9 people. They're all appointed by the governor, and 5 of those persons are from what we call the industry. They're real estate brokers or they're an associate. The other 4 members are members of the public. So that's the makeup. We serve for 3-year terms. Those are staggered terms. The governor appoints us, the governor removes us. Now, what is our role? What is our mission? Our mission is quite simple. We have two primary objectives, one of which is to protect the interests of the public. Yes, not the interests of the real estate profession, but the interests of the public. And then it's also to set minimum standards for the profession. So those are our 2 primary roles. We take those roles very, very seriously. We meet the second Thursday of every month. We do not take the summer off. And our notices are 7 days out. So should you desire to come, and I see some members of the audience who do come down, if you desire to come and it's an open meeting, there's a session at the end for public comment. Now, what do? We have a whole host of other functions. In other words, we have the authority to discipline, we have the authority to investigate. We have the authority to enact laws and regulations regarding the profession. We just went through a joint sunset committee review. Very interesting process. It took us every bit of a year. But to give you some background, the commission in 1991 went through what we call the JSC review, and the JSC had 34 items that they wanted to get done in 1991. Well, somehow it slept. Those on the commission at that time didn't do anything towards it, so we were up for review in 2000. Guess what? The legislature said, you guys are not only up for review for 2000, but you didn't do what you're supposed to do in 1991. So it took us about a year to work through all of those efforts of requirements, of recommendations, and that was all in an open forum. That was handled by our subcommittees, and those meetings are open also. So we went through the Joint Sunset Committee. We adopted some recommendations. I'm just going to go over a couple of them, and then I'm going to get into some Q&A. One of the recommendations that we were challenged with was to streamline the process in terms of when a complaint was filed. So what we adopted was the commission normally heard complaints. That process is now heard by a judicial officer. So the commission is sort of removed from that process. We only hear the recommendations of that judicial officer. We can agree with them, or we can counter them or send them back. So that was a primary concern. It reduced the backlog of complaints from 30 down to, I think, we're operating in a timely manner. Also, charge was we being the Delaware Real Estate Commission, we oversee a couple forms. One is what we call the CIS, it's the Consumer Information Statement. We revised that. I don't think we revised it in the best interest of the public, but we revised it. One of the main revisions of that form was, and this is a form that you get when you interact with a real estate commission, with a member of the real estate profession. And it says, Nancy, you're about to come into a transaction with a real estate professional, and these are your rights. these are our obligations. And this is handed to her. She doesn't have to sign it. We encourage her to sign it, but she doesn't have to sign it. And it basically spells out our fiduciary responsibilities to Nancy. Oops, bad. We no longer have fiduciary responsibilities. We have statutory responsibilities. That was a big change. 10 years ago, you had a fiduciary relationship with your real estate professional. You now have a statutory relationship with your real estate professional. And you have that because your real estate professional wasn't doing an adequate job of telling you your fiduciary requirements. So the industry sort of retracted from that. Very frustrating. As I said, I'm one member out of 9. We don't all agree, but this is the process that we undertake to get the pendulum moving in somewhat of a progressive measure. But with that disclosure, with that CIS, it was changed again this year to say, public, me, Vincent White, can represent you in what we call a dual agency relationship without your consent. So these are some of the things that the commission gets involved with. And I heard somebody say a good old boy network earlier, and nothing could be further from the truth. We sometimes operate not necessarily, and I think in the most open and practical manner. The commission was established in April 1st, 1927. So we've been around longer than a minute. The makeup hasn't changed that much. And to some extent, we're always in a battle to make certain our professional needs do not oversee the public's needs. And so it's always quite a reminder to say, when we sit there and we say it out loud, I say it out loud, our role is to protect the interests of the public. End of story. And that's what we try to get done. So, again, I don't want to talk long. I know the main event is about to occur, but I did want to take an opportunity for any questions. A copy of the JSC report can be emailed to you by the Division of Public Regulations, who has oversight for the commission. We will more than happily send out those final recommendations. The second form that we have oversight for is the seller's disclosures form. And if you've sold a house recently, or if you purchased a house recently, your real estate professional should have, and you should have been presented a seller's disclosure form. Now, I don't have one in front of me, but it is a question, I think it's about 60 or 70 questions, that spells out the current condition of your property and, or to some extent, any type of encumbrances to your property. We work through that form. It's my understanding it's been modified. I know it was modified a couple years ago regarding workforce housing. It's my understanding that the Delaware Real Estate Commission is now taking on that subject matter once more to modify that form. And that is a separate committee that meets, they will meet this month or next month. And again, some of the work of the commission is done by subcommittee, some of it's done by the whole. But the final results is always voted by the commission. So with that said, I'm ready for some questions. Yes, sir.
What exactly goes in related to workforce housing, and what is the requirement, and is that part of this proposed change? And I raised that when we looked at, for instance, you have these delays that take time. It was about 4 years in Odessa National before they were able to catch up with some of the lack of disclosure on expenses for the golf course and all that type of stuff. And we're seeing the same type of delays with this workforce housing disclosure.
I did not bring the form with me. There is an item on the seller's disclosure that deals with workforce housing. It's my understanding that there was some question from the public that it could be further delineated in terms of requirements of the seller and or purchaser to delineate whether they are in workforce housing. And so we were asked to take another look at the language, and that's what the commission's
But it's
doing.
currently a requirement that anyone who buys a house in a workforce housing house, the development has that on the disclosure?
It is a requirement that anyone selling property has to use this form. Now, you should know that all of its requirements enacted by Title 24, Section 29 of the code, requiring you to complete this. There is no penalty should you not complete this. So,
No penalty.
there is no penalty provision should you not complete this.
So, okay.
So, our conversation regarding this form is very simple. This is a matter of record when you go to closing. Your attorney, this is a part of your closing documents. Your attorney should have this as a part of his or her closing documents. We've asked the property section of the bar to say, you cannot close without this document. And quite frankly, folks, if you were buying, or if your relatives were buying a house or selling a house and you don't have this form completed, do not close.
Can I get a clarifying question? On
Sure.
There's no administrative penalty, but, so that would leave a aggrieved purchaser of a home to the civil courts to sue perhaps the government agencies for negligence?
Well,
Or
what has
who would
happened?
you-
What has happened is, as you know, we are going through a lot of foreclosures, REO closings. You guys are aware of those in your community. One of the things that I have a big issue with is that lenders, some, most, are not completing this form. And we, real estate professionals, still take the listing. And my comment is that at some point, you're going to open up a world of hurt for your broker and for yourself because you're not giving adequate what the law says you should give. The lender is saying, we don't live there, we don't care. That's fine. This document says if you don't live in the house, if you have an estate, someone left you the house, you can simply put on there, did not live in the house. That's adequate for disclosure purposes. Most lenders are not doing that. There's only 3 exemptions for not completing this.
I mean, Bill Biden just did some work for some unfair lending. Was he aware of this issue at that time?
I cannot tell you what the AG's office was or we're not aware of. I know it's been an issue, with me and other members of the commission that it does not make sense that lenders or anyone does not complete this. If you're buying or purchasing an REO or foreclosed property and you don't have this document, then you are not adequately protected and or represented. Now, back to your question regarding civil, there has been a couple incidents where the members of the public have sued because they found out, of course, after the fact that something that was on this document was not disclosed to them or didn't have knowledge. So that is one. I find that woefully inadequate. I don't, for anybody to be involved with the transaction, from the attorney down to the broker, we know this form is a valid form. We know it's required, and we should be doing it. But, there's no penalty. Now, the penalty provision doesn't come on our part. We don't have that authority. It is a legislative authority matter. But it surely would be something, as a civic association or civic league or an individual, that you should take up to say, hey, Vincent White said there are lenders, there are individuals who are not completing the CIS, and they're going to closing. How could that be when the attorney minimum should say, where's the self-disclosure form as required by law?
Shane Bowe's not running right now, but that's, we'll call him anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to
Yes, sir. Chuck.
clarify that I was the one who went to the commission, and the question was, do all the buyers in a workforce housing community get notified of Section 2, line 8? Is the property subject to any agreements concerning affordable housing or workforce housing? Now, the county code, Section 4007, 341, mandates that there's a development agreement per the development. That's for all of Bayberry, all of High Hook, all of Preserve, so on down the list. The way that I interpreted the existence of this law and this form was that if you buy into Bayberry, or Ponds, Odessa, that you're told that it is a workforce housing community. Quiet, please. In January of this year, I received an email from the Division of Professional Regulations telling me that you were only to be notified of this line on this form if you were buying a workforce housing home in a workforce housing community, which meant that in the end result, at least 80% of the buyers, being the market rate people, weren't advised of items that are also contained in this code, such as 15-year fixed price, available to low or very low income, or non-uniform maintenance fees. Just some of the things that are in this code. So that was the issue. Now, back to something that Mr. White mentioned. And I think that Mr. Harrington last month misunderstood what I was saying. He offered to amend this to include not just the unit, but also the community. My request, back to along the lines that Dave Carter was asking, just enforce this form for every unit in the subdivision. Nothing extra. I was told that they have, and you can confirm there's no enforcement powers.
We can amend that form with public input.
Okay.
And that, there's two forms. There's new construction and there's existing.
Right.
So the new construction, we can amend it the same as what the public input is. The bottom line is that, as I said before, there's no teeth in that. So at some point, I mean, truth be told, the Real Estate Commission promulgated laws to have new construction representatives be required to be licensees of the state. You do not have to be a realtor, but you have to be a licensee of the state. You have to hold a real estate license. Doesn't mean you have to be a realtor. We promulgated a law, legislation that says no matter what you're selling, especially new construction, you need a real estate license. That did not go very well.
And we supported that.
I know, that did not go very well. So this is where it's at. Chuck is working with me to buy this house for $500,000. I have to do disclosure, I have to do due diligence, statutory and all that. But should he decide to walk across the street and look at new construction for the same or less price, he gets no required representation. Now, is that fair?
No.
But that's where we're at.
Because new home sellers can be licensed under the license of the developer.
Well, no.
Not the individual.
My builder friends, and I, you know, with these are comments I built, my builder friend says, Vincent, look, I understand what you're trying to do, but this is my property. I would like my employees to market my properties without the requirement of being a license.
Right.
And that's the argument.
Right.
Now, I can see both sides of it, but that's the argument that put forth. We put forth that argument that says everybody should be licensed, not necessarily become a realtor, but be licensed.
Right.
And that idea was shot down. So that's the beauty of America. It's a democratic process.
Well, to complement what Vince just said, and Dave mentioned it, over the period of the last 6 years,
2 minutes.
the Odessa National Community, which is populated by about 80% of non-Delaware residents, has undergone years of agony and miswording of promises and non-disclosure, you name it. I'm sure you're probably familiar with some of it. The dilemma that I have hearing some of these complaints, and I get them probably a couple times a week, right, Frank? Is that it's not being solved. It's not being resolved, and like Mr. White said, there's no teeth in a lot of the stuff that's being put out there. So with that, do you have any final comments?
Final comments is this. That form, you can talk to your legislator about it, your legislators, and put some teeth in it. We'd be more than happy to support that. We do have an input process. I know you're a part of it, and the gentleman in the back will be a part of it regarding revisions to that process. I will not be a part of that process. The bottom line is that a lot of our communities are pretty much impacted by the economy. And so when property changes hands, people should know the condition of that property. I don't care if the lender's in Timbuktu. They should have a right to know the condition of that property. If we do not enforce that provision to make certain that hopefully a conversation with the property section of the bar that says an attorney, you don't close without that, which you really shouldn't, but I'm not an attorney, don't want to be one. So I think those are the kind of conversations that you as a Civic League surely could have a conversation.
I got one last question. Go ahead, Fritz. Your last one.
Yeah, my name is Fritz Griesinger.
Paul had a question.
My name is Fritz Griesinger, and I've been a community advocate for over 60 years. And this issue is not a new issue with me. My specific involvement with this goes back at least as far as September 1st, 2008. And it has that same section in it. Now, I also have the newest copy, what I think is the newest copy of January 1st, 2011. And that has the same statement. Now, the thing that concerns me is if I go to Chapter 25, Title 6 of the Delaware Code, there's a section in here.
That's your cross section.
Yeah, and it says, a lot of boilerplate here, understand, okay? It says that this is a legally binding document, okay? So it means that anybody, sooner or later, can come and either litigate you, or the commission, or the seller.
That's right.
And if it hasn't happened yet, it probably will happen sooner or later. My mission in life is to protect people that aren't here yet. And it's a little hard for me to tell them, hey, when you go into one of these communities, you are protected by right to get one of these statements. And if you don't get it, and you buy the house, you can still go back and litigate that.
And people have, and unfortunately, I'd rather deal with it up front.
I would too.
And people respond to, now, if we had a complaint that someone did not get that form, we as a commission could promulgate some violations based on our code. The problem is that, as a whole, property should not close without that document. That's, to me, the last safety net. Attorneys will probably say, well, don't put it on us. But the bottom line is that, you guys can talk to your elected officials, get some teeth in the document. We couldn't do it, and we'd be more than happy to.
What kind of teeth are you talking about? It says it's a legally binding document.
Well, people respond to monetary pressure mostly. I don't speed, not because I don't have a lead foot, but I just can't afford those tickets, you know what I mean? So that monetary penalty sort of catches people's attention. But I wanted to hear what the county exec has.
I know you're not a lawyer, Vincent, but I know you're very knowledgeable on the subject. Where does the Fair Housing Act hit this disclosure form? I'm being told from people that certain things that people may want to put in it would be in violation.
It is a very, very, very thin line. And anybody who knows me knows that I abhor any violation of fair housing. It's a very, very thin line. But now the question is, do the onus comes down to the property owner, or does it come down to the real estate profession? As Mr. Freeze said, for that to go wrong, we're all going to get sued. The question is, do you want to put a big S on a property and say this is workforce housing, or do you try to deal with some other ways? I think we skirt a big, we're skating on ice. But I think there's some ways that you can do it as a whole. But you might not like it, just like you're identifying workforce housing. Maybe you need to identify estate 2 zoning, or maybe you need to identify other types of zoning. But I think you're going to skate a real thin line on this.
Would you agree or disagree that if the people who buy in these projects were given a copy of this code with nothing more than this pertains to this project and let them read it themselves?
As I open the statement, my job as Delaware Real Estate Commission is real simple. It's to protect the interests of the public.
Right.
And my personal views don't always have to come in effect. I think the more informed the consumer is, the better choice he or she's going to make. I know there's some real estate professionals, just as there are homeowners, who will forget that this is workforce housing. Just the nature. I forgot I lived in workforce housing, and you go to sell it, You don't get asked what happened, you didn't disclose to me. So I think one of the conversations we had with the county executive, if I'm wrong, Paul, let me know. We suggested, we being in the real estate profession, suggested that we could flag the tax maps to say that this home is subject to some type of reduction. Because that way, if the homeowner should forget, if the realtor, or real estate professional doesn't know it, you could have a snafu similar to what we're talking about. So I think, you know, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but yeah, I want the public to be informed, but I do want fair housing rights to be protected. And I think that's a conversation I know the county exec and his staff has talked about, as well as some of you in this room have heard me talk about. But I think we could have a meeting of the minds at some point. I know the commission's going to err on the side of the public. I'm one vote. They got 8. I've been voted down before. So, you know, but I think we'll have a conversation about it. And we're surely, with the county exec, to have a conversation about it too. But I do think it's walking on ice.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, now we need